I've gotten Ubers plenty of times before, but this one experience I had a few years ago was the creepiest and weirdest of my life. It was a Saturday night, and I had been out bar hopping with my friends. It was around 1:30 a.m. when my friends and I decided to call it a night. I said goodbye to my friends as they walked to the bus stop. I live in the opposite direction, so I started walking to a spot where my brother was going to pick me up. But as I pulled my phone out, I received a text message from my brother telling me that he can't pick me up as he had been called into work. He works nights. I opened up an Uber, and there was this one guy about 2 minutes away, so I clicked for him to pick me up. His name was Jim, and in his picture he was a balding middle-aged man with a mustache and some stubbled facial hair. An old car pulled up beside me. Jim looked out the window and confirmed that he was my Uber ride. Once I got inside, I noticed there was another person in the passenger seat. I said, "Oh, hi." They didn't reply to me. I asked Jim how his night was going. He didn't reply either. I was too drunk and too tired to care. Destination to my house was already on the app before I made the call for the Uber, so Jim started driving. I was scrolling through my phone and texting friends, and I started to hear Jim whisper and mumble to himself. I couldn't understand what he was saying, and if he was talking to me or the person next to him, but I ignored it. As we were driving, he started to become more on edge, and the things he was whispering to himself was becoming more coherent. One thing I heard Jim say in a loud whisper was, "You do it. I can't risk going back to jail." Even though I was drunk, that was enough for me to stop playing around on my phone and focus on my surroundings and keep a closer eye on Jim and the person next to him. The person hadn't said a word the whole time I was in the car, which I found weird. I looked around outside and we were on the freeway, which wasn't unusual as you had to take to get to my house. The next thing that happened is Jim pulled the car over at a rest stop. He once again started talking to himself. Jim then said, "I won't do it. You can't make me." He then hit the person next to him in the face, and he got out the car. He grabbed something from the trunk and walked off into the darkness. I was stunned with what was going on. I asked the person in the passenger seat if they were all right, but once again, they didn't say anything or do anything. I asked again, this time tapping him on the shoulder. Something didn't feel right after grabbing hold of him. It felt cold. I took a closer look at the person, and to my complete shock and horror, the man looked lifeless with a hoodie on, and with white and bluish purple type skin. The expression on his face was shocking. It was as if he were frightened to death. I sat back in the seat and couldn't believe what was going on. I could hear something from outside. It sounded like dirt being shoveled. That must have been what Jim was doing, digging some type of ditch or grave. At that point, I got out of the car and ran down the road, hoping to spot another car to pick me up. This was a sobering experience, but I was still drunk and tired. I ran down the road, but didn't get very far without being out of breath and needing to throw up. I'm not sure if I'm running around at night after drinking or the horrifying experience. Maybe both, but I felt sick. I turned around to look at Jim's car. I started to fear the worst when I saw the car start. I thought he was about to chase me down, but he didn't. He just started the car and then sped off into the night, never to be seen again. I felt so relieved, but I still kept fearing he would come back. I carried on walking down the road until passing the car, and they gave me a lift home. This incident scarred me for life, and I never got an Uber again.
About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night. And the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side. I had been driving about 45 minutes. And I was starting to get really tired. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22. And then fell asleep. Sometime later I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, it's 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds. And because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was an animal inspecting the car. But why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rear view mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away to the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched the couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car, parked off to the side of the road with the driver's seat door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. And there wasn't. Then I looked in my rear view mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. And he started screaming at me.
Hey, you get the hell out of your car.
I noped the hell out of there and sped off.
I've told this story to a few of my friends, and many of them don't believe me. I'm going to be honest. If someone would have told me this, and had I not experienced what I did, I wouldn't believe them either. This happened when I was in Girl Scouts a few years ago. My troop were camping near a Navajo reservation, and in the middle of the night, I needed to pee. And knowing that the toilets were a little far away, and me being quite lazy, I decided to just trot along to behind a bush and do my business there. So, off I went. I did my business, and certainly wasn't far from my tent, as it was on the edge. So, I started walking back, and that's when I see it. There's something in the moonlight. I can't quite make it out, but it does make me stop so that I can admire it. It's a strange shape. Is it a rock? I tilt my head, and that's when I see a gleam, a reflection from its eye. This thing is alive. It tilts this enormous dog-like head, and I stand there petrified. I look up and down, and there's barely enough light to make out some kind of strange, brown, doggish creature. Sort of like if you were to stretch a dog and have it stand on its hind legs. But these legs looked strong and muscular, and nothing like a dog's back legs. It stood there, and it looked at me. Then I looked at it. For a moment, I thought that this was going to be the end, and that creature was going to take me away and swallow me whole. It looked like it could. It must have been at least 7 feet tall, and I'm quite a petite thing after all. But just before I managed to soil myself, the creature, whatever it was, made a mad dash and was gone. It was dark and I couldn't follow where it went, but I went back to my tent and passed out. I woke up in the morning and tried to pretend that what happened didn't happen. I ended up peeing myself in my sleeping bag from the fear, it seems, because I woke up soaking wet. That was unpleasant. Needless to say, I didn't have much fun at camp anymore, and I was always on edge. I never went back.